what gets you hired is not those pretty pictures that you see online. It's the design work and the thinking that are really what are important for concepts and designs. People paint and draw for themselves, but the point of entertainment design is you're not drawing for you, you're drawing for them. Don't be intimidated by my really good paintings or that guy's really good renderings. Focus on your ideas and focus on learning the business behind your ideas. The techniques, those things will change, but think about how you could take ownership of your designs and bring them to the people that you want to sell it to directly. My name is Yariv. My background is I started in high school, sort of playing video games, watching movies, really into entertainment. And when as I was going into 12th grade, my mother asked me what I was going to do the summer after graduation from high school. And she's from Morocco, so she speaks with a French accent. And I said, I'm just going to sit here, Mom, and I'm going to play video games and watch movies for this whole summer. And she goes, and for those of you who out there don't know Moroccan, that means no way in hell. And so she said, no, 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 no. I want you to focus. I want you to go be a producer, not a consumer. Go out and make money. So my mother, who was a hairstylist at the time, she's retired now, and she was very friendly. She worked in a place called Glendale, near Burbank, California, and a lot of studio guys would go in there. And there was a particular studio there called Digital Domain, and one of her customers that she had for years, she told them that what I was going to do, and he said, "We're starting up an interactive division at Digital Domain. Would your son want to come in internship for us?" And my mother said, "Of course he would. Just like any good mother would." So when
Volunteering for you.
yes, yeah. So what I was hoping to go in there and make graphics and do a lot of cool things, but like like Mike and Sully, you get all that training, but just like Mike and Sully, I started in the mailroom and I was just giving packages to people that would come in. And I really wanted out of this internship, but we did have a very, very cool CG department there that I don't know if I think B3 does exist today at Playa del Rey. I'm not sure. It's not the same company. It was sold back, I think, 2015 or 2016, not sure. But we had the CG department that was there that was just really phenomenal. And I would go in there and watch them during the breaks, use a program. I know this dates me, but it's coming back. So all the Blender users watching this are like, yeah, that's a dinosaurs program. It is called LightWave 3D. It was one of the very first 3D animation softwares out there. It's making a comeback though. You know that, Mo?
Really? It's the
Yeah,
same
you
the
go.
same company. They
No,
bounced
no, no,
back.
no, no. That back then it was New Tech. Then it was sold to I think another company, and then some of the original developers and some of the original staff that they had of New Tech came back and made got the licensing back, got the rights to make it back, got the source code, and started developing it. It was just too expensive to develop. They're coming back. They're a small
What was so
company.
special about it?
Lightwave was the first 3D program out there. It had two components to it. It had a layout, which you did all your animation in, and it had a modeler, which was
Mm.
had all your, so you bring in your models from the modeler to the layout and you'd animate it. Now, that was they did that for performance issues, that when you're animating, you don't need to see your vertexes and your polygons.
Hmm.
But that created a whole lot of issues that I couldn't get into right now. But it was not a very friendly program to animate in. It was much more of a friendly modeler. It had one of
Hmm.
the best renders out there. Um, I mean, back then, we didn't have GPU rendering and real time rendering like
Right.
we do today. But that thing was a force to be reckoned with. I mean, that thing was fast. It could handle a lot of polygons. It beat the pants off of Maya's default render. And Maya didn't, I don't even think Maya existed fully back then, in the early 2000s. There was a program called Sumatra, which became XSI. And then there was Maya, which was all being developed kind of simultaneously to each other. And I think Maya came out first, and that's what the industry favored.
Mm.
but LightWave was there way before everybody else. And LightWave was never known to have like the best character animation tools. But suffice to say, I watched them model in LightWave, and they'd model like vertex by vertex by vertex. And I'd ask
Yeah.
them, is there like an organic way to do modeling, or like a much more tactile way? They're like, nope. You either have to build things point by point, or, polygon by polygon, or just use these things called NURBS, which ZBrush didn't have, and they'd have other programs that did that at the time. And I was like, this is not cool. This is not fun. And around that time, I had no skills in CG, but I would just play on in the modeler program when these guys would go home from work, and I'd, stay there for hours on end, just like, I remember I stayed there till like 6 in the morning
Mm.
trying to make something. And it was just so much fun. But back then there was this talk of the town. There was this artist named Taryn, and Taryn, um, his portfolio, which you can still find online at Taryn.de. It's ancient. It goes from 1999 to about 2009, 2010. I think so.
What did he do?
He revolutionized the way that we work, in the sense that he did subdivision surface modeling, which was LightWave's specialty. It had
Mm.
this thing called meta-NURBS, and you would basically just the way almost like your Catmull ROM casual subdivision surfaces we see in ZBrush when you hit divide, that sort of a thing. But it did it virtually like we have in dynamic subdivisions. For any
Mm.
ZBrush users out there, it's like and so it was powerful, but I never really understood how it was used when I saw it in LightWave. And when he would show his screenshots on his website at the time, I was blown away by this stuff. And I said, the best advice I ever got from my mom was go to the source. And, Mom, I know you're probably not going to watch this, but if you are, that was your advice. And I sent him an email, and I said, listen, I seen who you are. I seen, how amazing you are at this stuff. I want to know how I can learn how to do this stuff. I'm at Digital Domain. I'm interning. I know you're also in Los Angeles. And he emailed me back that night and said, why don't you show up for dinner at 7 o'clock at my house? Here's my phone number. And I was like, oh my gosh. Back then, emails and websites weren't so prominent. So if you didn't really know the person, you would never have access to who they were. And I was
Yeah.
like, this guy's. So he opened up his house to me.
Wow.
His wife made like amazing food. We sat down, we talked for an entire evening. And he asked me, so why do you want to do CG? And I said, I just think it's awesome that you could just like turn a model in the viewport. You don't have to draw
Yeah.
anything. And he was like, that's why you want to do this? I said, I really like technology, and I like films and video games and entertainment. And he goes, okay, Mr. Yariv, I'll help you. But I have one condition, that if somebody ever has this much drive and energy, or as we say in Yiddish, chutzpah, has two meanings, by the way, for those who know what the meaning is. It has two meanings. One, it's like, drive, like if you can't get in through the front door, you'll get in through the side door, you know? So I had a lot of drive, and he's like, you're going to help that person. Whoever comes up to you, and just asks you for your help. You're going to promise me you're going to help that person. I'll give you as much time as I can. I'm a busy person, Terrence said, but I'll help you. And he trained me up in LightWave. And I remember seeing him model a head for the very first time. Took him like seconds of what it took those guys like weeks at Digital Domain. And he said, I'll show you one more tool. It's in beta. It's 1.55B of ZBrush, and it looked nothing like it did today.
Hmm.
Like nobody
Was
has
this your
any
first
idea.
time? Was this your first time seeing ZBrush?
Yes. And I
Wow.
remember when I saw it, it would be the equivalent experience of Steve Jobs seeing Xerox Spark before, and getting the idea
Yeah.
for what, Mac OS and, was going to be. And so I was like, this is the future. And he said to me, but there's something you should know. This ZBrush 1.55B cannot export anything from it that's usable for our purposes. It's just a tool that makes art.
Mm.
I'm like, what's the point of that? Like, why make a tool
Yeah.
like that if it's not
Yeah.
useful? And I remember he sculpted a head in like 10 minutes that
Yeah.
took anybody modeling with polygons, well, back then, days.
Right.
And so he said, I've modeled all this stuff, and he would show me all these cool snowmen that he made and creatures. I was blown away. And that was, obviously career changing. I got to meet the best in the world.
Yeah.
My opinion still is. But I think he dropped out of the field and dropped out of the industry a while back. He prefers to program nowadays. We're still in
Hmm.
touch. That's the thing.
Wow.
So
How long ago was it that you met him?
it was 2003.
Wow. So more than 20 years later. That's crazy.
Yeah. I was like his little brother and still am, and we're very close to this day. The other person who I met there in that internship was my last day of the internship. There was an art department that we had, and some guys were coming in from lunch, and I was leaving actually for the day. That was it. That was my last day, and he had a portfolio with them, and they were all like going nuts about it. And he had designed his own car, which is now sitting in the Peterson Car Museum. It's called
Wow.
the Xeno One. If anybody wants to go see it, it's amazing. It's honestly the most beautiful expression of design I'd ever seen back then. It was something that, I mean, who would design and build their own car themselves? Everything was, I think a lot of the parts for that thing came from the 1990s, but the Xeno One. So this artist shows his portfolio in there, and he has everything from creatures to cars to environments. And I asked him one question: where did you learn how to do this? And he's like, "Oh, I went to Art Center College of Design, and I was a transportation design major, and I decided to use these skills in entertainment." And I was like, really? And by the way, I have to remind everybody, this is before Brainstorm. This is before Schoolism. This is before the YouTube era. This is before Fangzhou Design. This is before Noman. And so I said, thanks. And I didn't even bother getting his email. There was no social media back then, so I just
Yeah.
like, see ya. And I never saw him again. And for
Wow.
those of you who want to know who he is, his name is Nick Pugh. NickPughDesign.com. Check that out, Mo. Um, you can leave that in the description below. Like and subscribe, push the bell for notifications when we go live.
You're a
Um,
pro.
oh yeah, it's like let's get into this. So no,
So,
so
so was that your first kind of exposure to art, or were you doing art growing up, like drawing and
I had
sketching?
never drawn at all before that point.
Wow. So what,
For
like
me,
what?
I couldn't draw myself out of a paper bag. I mean,
So
that
what was
was,
it that like you saw that you really enjoyed watching movies and playing games, and you're like, I would love to do this as a job?
dude, there was a movie called Back to the Future. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it. Um, I saw this DeLorean that was just so cool. It was like, the doors open, it flew, and I was like, that's so awesome.
Yeah,
And later on, I found all those guys that worked on that movie in the art department went to Art Center.
that's funny.
And I said, they designed Battlestar Galactica. They designed the stuff in Star Wars. Even the opening title credits, for those who don't know, was designed by a guy named Gary Meyer of blessed memory. He was my teacher at Art Center, and he designed that credits. Because
Oh, really?
if you guys go, there's a YouTube short called Saved by the Edit. You guys can go look at it. You'll see his storyboards in there. He also designed the way the TIE fighters fly. That whole
Hmm.
you know, they just copied moviolas from World War II of Nazi planes flying, and they just basically rotoed the movement frame by frame as they would
Oh,
fly. And
interesting.
so that was Gary's contribution. So um, the my entrance into Art Center College of Design was a little bit funny. They had Art Center at night. I don't know if they still do, but they might. And it was basically a program that you go in there and it was open to the public. You could go there and take a couple classes that they had in the daytime program, and they would bring you to a certain level that you could apply. So
Interesting.
is my first class taught by Richard Petrushka. You guys can go check his work out at rpmart.com. That's Richard Petrushka, RPM Art. He does automotive fantasy sculpts that are just dying to be done in ZBrush. And so, but they're not. They're actually clay, and everything is asymmetrical. It's beautiful. And I took his class, and I was there after 3 or 4 weeks of just drawing and rendering light and shadow. Like we did, remember the old VisCom
Yeah.
thing with the lights and these geoforms over here that Neville Page gave me. So we would draw and draw for hours and days and weeks, and then in that week 4, this art director came in from what later became a division of Ubisoft, but he asked Richard if he could make an announcement to the class. He was an alumni, and he said, "Is there anybody in here you think that wants to play games and be a designer or like a?" They didn't say concept designer. That word didn't exist. Like illustrate for me as a junior artist,
Hmm.
and he told the guy, Richard was like, "There's nobody in here that plays games. These are all industrial designers and car designers and people that want to go into that field." And he goes, "Can I at least give it a shot?" So I'm all the way in the back of the room. I heard none of this discussion, and I only know about it later. Uh, he gets up and he says, "Okay, how many of you guys play games?" And then one hand goes up in the back, and it's mine. he's, he's like, "That's it? That's it? All right." So he didn't even ask me if I've drawn before or whatever. He said,
Yeah.
"Dude, what games do you play?" I said, "I play Warcraft. I play Diablo. I play StarCraft. I play anything that has to do with strategy. And I also like real time strategy games and third person shooters." And he's like, "Well, we don't make the latter, but we make the former." And he goes, "We make a game called Heroes of Might and Magic. Would you like to come and try out for
Yeah.
this position?" I was like, "What would he have to do?" He goes, "You just show up and we give you a test." I'm like, "I don't do so well with tests." So he goes, "Well, you'll see. So show up on Thursday."
I just
So I
want
was,
to interject for a second. I just when I was over in Germany for this toy fair, there's a board game company. I forget the name of them. I have their card here somewhere, but they these really cool board games with like miniatures and stuff. And they actually made a Heroes of Might and Magic game, like board game. I'd heard about it from Rodolfo. Like they did a Kickstarter a number of years back, and then like
was it Heroes
it's
and Might and Magic 3?
it was like a few of them. Here, it's what's the name? I have the card here. Archon Studios, Archon Studio.
Arcane Studios, right?
Maybe it's like they spell it with an O though.
Oh,
But
Arkham.
yeah,
But
but
what?
it was
But
like a
which
Polish.
version of the game? Which version of the game?
I think it was three. I'm pretty sure.
So 3 was the big flagship game, and I worked on the expansions for 3, which I'll tell you
Hmm.
guys how I got the job. It's just kind of interesting. So the job was I went in there, and so the game was created by John Van Canegum, JVC for short. That's what we called him. Not the John Vincent Company, but John Van Canegum. He was from Solvang, California. He was a race car driver. He sold his company to 3DO and New World Computing, and so he yeah, so that was a board game. He was a D&D fan. Then he made his own real-time strategy game. He made 2 games. He made a game called Might and Magic and then Heroes of Might and Magic. So I was on the
Mm.
hero side. And he, this art director said, "Okay, I have an assignment for you. You're going to go into that room. Here's some paper. Here's some pencils. Give me a design of castle." I said, just one castle?" He said, "Yeah, just one castle." So I went behind there. 45 minutes later, I come back to like 7 sketches, and I'm very frustrated because none of those sketches are finished. And I said, "Listen, I don't do well here with tests. Can I just come back on like Monday and take the test again?" And he said, "No, Monday's President's Day, but I just want to let you know you can show up on Tuesday for work." I'm like, "But can I at least take the test again?" And he's like, "I see that you're just not getting it. I want to hire you." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, that was
That was easy.
easy." I said, "Why did you like any of these sketches?" Because nobody that we've auditioned this part for has come back with 7 sketches that are halfway decent. And they could barely do one. You did 7. I'm like, "That's because Art Center has this thing where you don't just do one design. Oh,
Hmm.
you do 7, right?
Yeah.
You do 20. You do as many as you can, and every die design has to be different and good, and you have to be happy about doing each one." So I came back to there, and they were people there that were really cool. And the games industry is a lot different back then than it is today. Back then, you could basically just walk in and get yourself a job. Today, all sorts of different things to get in there, but it's not as complicated as you think. If you're good, there's work, and I think the same holds true for today. So I went to I went to this company, and I learned a lot about 3D modeling for games and how design is done for games. And I got to work as a junior artist under several illustrators that were really good. And the game was 2D and 3D, but it wasn't real time. The After that company closed down years later, I was reached out to by Ubisoft, a company called Nivel Entertainment, I think, and they were also based in LA. They wanted me to do some designs for them because I had worked on 3 and 4. Oh, excuse me, not 3 and 4. I had the expansions for 3 and 4, and so I got to work on 5, 6, and 7 as like a freelancer.
Nice.
you know, that was the story there. But um, when that sort of ended, I came right into Art Center, and I was going there full time in the transportation entertainment design program. Well, the entertainment design didn't exist until towards the end of my time there, but yeah, that's how I got to Art Center. So,
Wow. How was it?
so
Was it difficult to get in back then? 'Cause I know now it's like really hard to
Art
get in.
Center, it was more impossible today. Today, it's easier to get an Art Center. They accept, I think, 75% of the people who apply.
Uh-huh.
Back then, the transportation design program, there were 3,000 people applying for 16 spots.
Wow.
And so you had to be really good. So the first time that I actually applied, I got in, but it was very difficult. And I liked cars, but you couldn't show that you liked entertainment. So what you showed in your portfolio was product design and
Interesting.
transportation design.
Well, they didn't
And
want
so
entertainment people.
they did not want entertainment people back then. So I just
Wow.
went in there and I didn't tell nobody.
Wow.
It was like hiding Jews. You know, it was like they're gonna find out that I'm an entertainment guy. And so when I was there, I I met some pretty cool people that are still my friends today, actually.
Yeah, and you had some of the best teachers probably ever back at
Yeah,
Art Center.
there, and probably never again
Yeah,
back
yeah.
there. So
Who would you
I
say was your biggest influence, like your biggest mentor?
my mentor, like the person I was closest with, was probably Neville Page,
Hmm.
and the late Norm Sherman. But also, first and foremost, Scott Robertson is definitely the godfather of perspective and rendering and design.
Yeah.
And he was a hard grader. I know he's probably watching this, just a hard grader. And I remember my first critique from him was so blistering.
Hmm.
That we had a guy in that class named, I forget his last name. His first name was Kang, but he was really good. And so he and these other guys were just like ringers. Like they would just every week, they would just, blistering amounts of details and like just oozing with inner information. So I decided to go back and I decided to literally go in and draw the like the most detailed stuff I could do and just really give it. And I put it up on the board and Scott looks at it and he looks back at me and he looks at it and he goes, I have no idea what I'm looking at all. And I just wanted to go cry someplace. But he was very adamant to tell me it's not that you're a bad person, it's the design that's terrible. And off that, you
Yeah,
know? And
yeah.
I just was like almost in tears. But I moved on, and later that day, I had Neville Page's class, and Neville's like, "Oh, this is so good! I see what you were trying to do." I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, I see it in there somewhere." But
Yeah, yeah.
so like he was, telling me, "Yeah, this is great, a great start, just a great start." And I came back the next week in class, and I said, Scott, Neville Page said that this wasn't half bad. He goes, "Well, I'm going to have a talk with Neville." And I was like, okay. So from then on out, like I really tried to like learn from Scott, like to not overwhelm my whole page with details and just guide the eye and
Hmm.
really about design. Like, what are you really trying to say? And who is this for? How is somebody else going to perceive your work? That's the
Hmm.
real thing. Many
Hmm.
people paint and draw for themselves, but the point of entertainment design and automotive design and product design is you're not drawing for you, you're drawing for them.
Yeah.
So it's less about the touchy feely stuff and emotional stuff. It's more about how can I use these sets of tools to communicate this idea to
Right.
you.
Right. Right.
And for me, I yeah, I really fell in love with design. And the other teacher there, a blessed memory, no longer with us, was Norm Schumann, spelled Shureman. He was murdered in 2010 and at a Persian New Year's party, but he was literally by far the best. Um, he was the person that taught me rapid visual communication of sketching and ideas and how to use and build a visual vocabulary effectively. And he had a student that was a TA for us that's now really famous named Peter Hahn. If you guys, I met Pete back at Lightbox in 2019 when we were there.
Yeah.
And he hadn't seen me in such a long time, but he recognized me right away and said, "It's so good to see you. Your work rocks." And I'm like, "Oh, you stop it. You and your brush pen." Yeah. Like, I mean, so it was really great actually to mention another person who is also very influential at Art Center. I call these guys like the Five Musketeers, but Ray Bustos, who I whose house unfortunately burned down in those fires. His house burned to the ground. Every single piece of artwork and sculpture he ever made, painting, anything, all of his possessions gone.
Wow.
And I built his website, so everything he had is still on that website. That didn't go up, but you guys can support him out there. Just send him some love. He was the most amazing anatomist ever and taught me that anybody could do anatomy.
Hmm.
Anybody. And I taught that to my students like Mo and other people. So yeah, you can never know not know enough anatomy, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
definitely one of the most important things when it comes to
Yeah.
making good character design and even creatures too. Yeah. So from Arts Center till now, you kind of been around the block, shall we say? So how do you feel that like your kind of approach to design has changed over the years?
Well, after Art Center, I went to this place called Cafe FX. It was a visual effects firm because back then there was no the position called concept designer or concept artist did not exist. You had illustrators that basically did all your concept work. And back then, you get like we were working on films and commercials and stuff. So if you had to design something, you literally had the morning to do it. And then by the end of
Hmm.
the day, it was modeled. So the rapid iteration, the rapid movement to, get an idea out there and built as quick as possible. I think nowadays I can start right in 3D.
Hmm.
you know I
Hmm.
can start my sketching like in a just a real crude form, and most of the
Yeah.
time if it's an environment it's mostly a top down view, anything that gets me running. But sometimes if like David Levy, who's my boss at Pitch Dev Studios, will ask, I need an environment shot. So if I'm not going to render it in 3D, I'm going to do whatever I can to quickly iterate to get him an idea and then get a thumbs up to move it into 3D and Unreal and render,
Yeah.
just to get those ideas out there fast, deliberate, and concise is something that I think hasn't changed, but the tool sets have changed and gotten
Mm.
better.
Mm.
So yeah,
What's kind of your process to get things out quickly?
give me a subject matter.
So let's say, like you're saying, your example, you have an environment, so you want to quickly get one
Okay,
out to just
so
get the idea.
give me an style, give me an idea for an environment, just like what kind of a setting, just
Let's say a planet that's a jungle where the
okay.
rivers are
Answer
mercury.
answered a great, 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 great. So the first thing I would do nowadays is there is a lot of great tools out there that ethically do AI.
Hmm.
And the one that I'll mention today is called Viscom, created by Jordan Taylor and another guy called, I think, Kalen. Forget what his name is, Kalen something or other. And what you could do is they have bought photo Shutterstock images,
Hmm.
like millions of them, and they've trained on that data source that they own, and they
Hmm.
can give you legal ownership from that from your outputs. And so that is really amazing because you want to be able to copyright your work, and
Yeah.
most AIs can't do that. But what I would do is I would do a loose painting to the best that I can,
Hmm.
and then I would maybe do some really fun selections of this area, and then maybe I'd throw some photo bashing in there and just give David an idea. Or if it's something like a full-on jungle that he needs a fly-through of a camera, I will definitely go into 3D first in Unreal Engine. I will make use of the Metascans library,
Mm.
and I will just tweak the environment, tweak my lighting, and give him a fly-through where he could just put the camera wherever he wants, and I'll build the set out that way. I'll use ZBrush. I'll use everything I can. The idea is I give him a gray model by end of the day, and
Hmm.
then I would do a nice gray rendering, and then he give some critiques about where to place things, and then we go for the detail maybe the next day or the next morning. But sometimes if it needs to be fast and done, and it's just a still image for production design, then
Yeah.
I'm going to photo bash. I'm going to use Viscom. I'm going
Yeah.
to use whatever I can just to kind of get that in there. But sometimes they'll say like, let's just give us a sketch. So I'll do a quick painting.
Hmm.
That's another way to do it, like thumbnails. And the cool thing is you can take those little thumbnails into Viscom, make them real big, and then or use an AI upscaler,
Hmm.
and just that they have at Viscom, like or you can use what's that gigapixels AI tool that they have that does scaling.
Hmm.
But just there's some really cool AI upscalers that you can use. But yeah, Viscom has it. They have a really great way to get your sort of a your look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you use a lot of AI for like iteration. How do you think like AI is going to kind of play in to the industry as a
I like
whole?
to correct you. I use machine learning from Viscom and training my own models. They have ability called training your own palettes, where you can take like 7 or 10 pieces that are all kind of similar in style,
Hmm.
and you can create your own style for it. So
Oh, cool.
one of the projects that I'm working on with you, with Steven Silver, you saw how we were able to take his sketches, make them toys, and then
Right.
make a style from that. And then for derivative toys can be made from those,
The same
and you
kind
would
of
just like
style.
the same kind of style that we sort of meet, and then you could just crank up the settings. So like you can start with 0% influence that the drawing has. That's the thing about VisCom, which I liked, is that it rewards people who can draw and paint
Mm.
by giving them a good start. And in the world of design, we're not so, there are very unethical things like Midjourney out there and Stable Diffusion where they just scraped images. So I don't try to use those tools in production. I don't want to use those tools in production at all.
Yeah.
I know what they do, but I don't use them because it's really just plagiarism.
Hmm.
Using
Yeah.
machine learning. AI is more of a marketing term, and I feel its bubble is going to burst. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Do you think it's going to stick around in the creative industry, or you think it's
Oh, for sure, but it's not going to be
not going to be the way it's hyped
once
up?
those laws and those once those laws get passed.
Hmm.
I think that AI will, in America and otherwise, I think that copyright has to mean something, or anybody can just take your stuff.
Right. Right.
Um, I think that once those laws get passed and models have to get rebuilt or readdressed, then yeah, I mean, like the way we've banned TikTok in America,
Hmm.
I think we could ban certain platforms that promote the
Interesting.
unethical usage of AI.
Interesting. You
I
think
mean,
that's going to happen?
we banned human cloning. We
Right.
banned a
Right.
lot of other kinds of media that people shouldn't see. So I think that we could ban this stuff as well. We want to have a society that I think like, you know, for me, um, when people started using AI, they didn't know right away because it came around so fast. I think 2022 was the first time most people started using it. I've
Hmm.
been using it since, or experimenting with it since 2021. So,
Hmm.
you know, uh, it's gone a long way, but I notice it's hitting a peak at this point. Like,
Yeah. Kind of a
you know,
plateau.
well, you could also see it does certain things well, like photorealism. That's like photographs of real people. It can
Right.
do pretty convincing, but anything deliberate is
Yeah.
very difficult for it to achieve. The
Yeah.
training
Yeah.
data just can't identify what that is.
I think
Um,
it was Shane Olson was saying with his like one of his problems with AI is that you can't direct it. Like it spits out an image, but if you say I want to tweak the hand or the arm or I want the outfit to be a different color or whatever, it'll just go and restart the whole image from scratch. It's
that
not
is that is
like
that is unfortunately um, a the issue is machine learning, but the platforms have in painting, like Midjourney has it in their web browser,
yeah.
and Viscom you can in paint. Like if you want, like if you notice on the guitars, you know, like I wanted a gold pick guard instead of a white plastic pick guard, so
Hmm.
I just made my selection, made it a little bit off white, and then ran a. Again, I had to paint some stuff so it
Yeah,
understood
yeah.
that was a pick guard, but it actually understood that I needed white and a material
Hmm.
associated with that. But I think it could maybe, if you could imagine, like if it could understand the 3D data with polygroups that it generates, maybe that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Where
The
we could
3D stuff
generate.
is the 3D stuff where it is now is kind of garbage.
It's getting
Um,
better though. I mean, if you
yeah,
look
yeah,
at
no,
if you,
all of it's getting better. It's all going to improve, and
but I still think it's not deliberate enough. Like we still need
mhm,
artists. Even the people that
right.
I work with who develop 3D AI will tell you the data sets are not big enough. The
Hmm.
data sets have to be for 2D, have to be, huge, but the data sets for 3D have to be really,
Insane.
really
Yeah,
insanely big. And
yeah.
you can't train your own models in 3D like you would think you could. Even all the data that Disney has, and Warner Brothers has and everybody else has from every film that they've ever worked on is not enough data to make good 3D
Wow.
consistently. But
Wow.
I would love the opportunity, Bo, to have AI unwrap my mesh. Just let it do that. I mean, I don't want to do that. I don't think
Yeah.
other people enjoy out there doing. Maybe you enjoy unwrapping your meshes, but I don't. So,
Yeah. Have
I
AI
mean, if
do
you're,
the boring stuff, the
yeah,
tedious, annoying
yeah,
stuff.
let it make the topology for me. I don't want
Right.
to do that,
Right.
right?
Right.
Let it do the things that I don't want to do, like make polygroups.
Do you think that's going to happen? Do you think stuff like that's kind of the
I
future
hope
of
that happens
AI?
because that helps me.
Right.
But I think that the
That'd
problem is
actually be helpful as opposed to what they're
the
kind of
problem
doing
with the
now.
machine learning, the way that it's been really out there and put, is that it's coming out as a replacement for artists
But as people
using
are afraid
artists.
of.
Well, illustrators have a more of a direct existential threat as it stands now, but
Right.
designers who are solving problems, within tight tolerances, um, at this point, at this juncture, have no use for generative AI the way that it is used today on the major platforms. The exception, I think, being Viscom, because Viscom needs that control net data, that guide, in order to know what you want it to do. And
Yeah.
it does wonky things with a lot of the mechanical stuff. Like you can look at the mechanics of any mech that comes out of Midjourney
Hmm.
or any of those Stable Diffusion. They don't articulate. They look cool, but they do not articulate. They do not work
They
in
don't make
3D.
sense.
They do not make sense, and they cause problems for current pipelines.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if David
Yeah.
shows me an image and I'm like, I don't see what you want me to do here. That doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
Yeah.
You know,
When I was talking to Layla, she had said that like sometimes she'll get a brief, there'll be an AI image, and just certain things just won't make sense on it. And then sometimes the people are cool and they say like okay yeah make whatever adjustments you need. And then other times they're like no we want it to be exactly like this image. And it's like there'll be like an arm like they'll have like a third arm sticking out of their torso, or like a belt
well,
will kind of just like
that's getting
attach to
better.
nowhere.
That's getting better, but that issue that you mentioned of the belt getting attached to nowhere is a bit of a problem.
But
Like the way that
that's
certain,
really the bigger issue.
yeah,
The arm those problems are more obvious. But yeah, but like the things with like straps and belts and things that we kind of take for granted. Like of course it makes sense because it's in physical space, but the AI doesn't really understand what these things are and what they do, and so
undercuts are a problem. It doesn't see. It
mm,
has to make up that information that's underneath something. Like everything that is occluded, it's kind of impressive. But anything that's occluded from camera, it has to
it just
guess at
doesn't
what
know what
that
that
is.
is.
But
Yeah,
it can get close. It just has to guess at it. And
yeah.
that's what it gives you back. But I don't want to get into the ethics of AI, but I can tell you that um, it's not as helpful as we
As
might
people are
think
worried about.
when it comes to design. It
Yeah,
is like
yeah.
if I need a picture of a watermelon watercolor, yeah, you can go prompt that right now.
Right,
But
right.
I feel that they're trying to fight it the way that people fought clip art. Clip art
Mm,
is, Mo?
yeah.
Okay.
I've heard of
So
it. I'm not. It's a little
the
bit before
clip
my
art is
time.
like if you go into Microsoft Word and drag a picture, there's like a butterfly and a
Yeah,
flower. So when these like sites came out with tons of clip art, right? So like these artists try to fight it in their workplaces and say, "Oh, don't buy stock and whatever." But
interesting.
it
Why are they so
it
upset by it?
it competes with their product of what they're
Hmm.
marketing. Like if I could just buy stock images for something, then I won't need a photographer,
Oh, I see. I
right?
see.
But I don't think so because like when I think that there has to be more usefulness for artists that AI has to produce. I've seen
Yeah.
people argue back and forth about like when AI came out, they're like, I thought maybe these tools would assist me and give me a full turnaround that I could start with. Well, you can do that now. Right?
Hmm.
You can get somewhat of a decent turnaround, but how much work needs to get put into it to the point that it's useful for somebody else? What
Yeah.
I mean by that is that we work in pipelines. So if I have to give a sketch to an artist, he needs a front and a back view,
Right.
and he may need other views. So the AI has to generate those views the way that I need them, and they have to be specific. If he doesn't know what they are and there's no me to answer those questions for him, then you're going to have to do an extra lot of work to go in there and adjust that generated piece of AI to
Hmm.
make sense for you. I'll give you an example. Like we had a costume that we were designing, and somebody sent me an AI image, and I'm like, listen, that connection between the chest and the armpit is too tight. The actor is not going to be able to move his arm like this. Yeah, the actor is not going to be able to articulate his arm. So it's not going to be comfortable when we make the costume. So that has to change. And they're just like, just shut up and make it work. So like, I think you guys should just go find somebody else that can do this, because I can tell you that that's just not going to work right.
Right, right,
That's not going to articulate correctly. I mean, it looks cool, but
right. But it
there's
doesn't
so
have the
much.
proper function.
I mean, I'll give you an example of Neville's work. Like, I designed a creature for Neville's class one time, and I designed it with the mouth open like this, and really cool. It's all sorts of details coming out. And Neville's like, "This design's terrible. How is that jaw ever going to close?"
Hmm.
I'm like, "Well, I just was thinking about that one cool image that I made.
Right,
That's all I needed to do. Just make that image." He goes, "Now it's somebody else's job to figure it out, reverse what you did, and make it close, and then it doesn't look like what you just designed." It's
right,
called a
right.
dishonest drawing. Like, if you ever seen car guys, they'll do like a fisheye lens drawing of their car, and you're just like, but the car doesn't really look like that. It looks cool for
Right.
marketing, but it's like that car
It's
for a pitch.
distorted and
Like, I don't get it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
So with all that being said, like what's some of your like what advice would you give to people who are kind of entering the design industry at this point with because it's it is a very transitional period, so and there are these
don't
new
be
tools coming
intimidated.
around.
Just like at Art Center, right? With that guy Kang, last
Yeah.
name don't remember. Um, eh, I mean, he was soft, dude. He was as good as Sid Mead. I mean, he was just so good. If somebody out there could tell me his last name, I'd love to know it. He was just a brilliant painter and artist. He was an illustrator that just sort of jumped the tracks, and
Hmm.
like all of a sudden ended up on our department. Like, what are you doing here? But he would tell me, don't be intimidated by my really good paintings or that guy's really good renderings. Focus on your ideas.
Mm.
Focus on your ideas and focus on learning the business behind your ideas. How
Mm.
can you market this? Take this to market. Who's going to buy it and who's going to use it? The techniques and those things will change. But think about how you could take ownership of your designs and bring them to the people that you want to sell it to directly. So for him, I think that he wanted to make games. And so he developed games that he designed, did all the drawings and the concept work and the paintings. And he was able to pitch and make a game. I forget its name. It had a bunch of mechs in it. If anybody knows, it's not, I don't think it's around anymore, but that it was a multiplayer mech game that somebody told me that he made. And it was just so beautiful.
Mm.
And I mean, it looked gorgeous. It had a story to it and everything. That's sold. What won't sell is things that don't have an idea behind them. And I think that an idea really requires the time and patience. And to quote Toy Story 2, you can't rush art. And I
Hmm.
think that that's where we need to really hunker down and say to ourselves, okay, we have to be aware of AI, aware of what it can and can't do. Well, machine learning, aware of what it can and cannot do. How can we learn? How can we maybe teach it that we become the teachers and it becomes the students?
Hmm.
Right? So imagine like you have Mo's ability and his unique vision, and then Mo can train his own machine learning on his stuff, and then he can produce really cool stuff and get a variation of different ideas that he can see things in.
Yeah.
So that is the cool thing. If I could like stick a bunch of sketches into a something that can train on just my sketches and then give me some more variations in my own style, that means that I can offer a design to somebody else out there who will pay for it, but I want to see as many options as I can. And a lot
Right.
of people don't realize that what gets you hired is not those pretty pictures that you see online, on ArtStation. It's the design work and the thinking that
Hmm.
goes behind some of those images that are really what are important for concept and designs. If
Yeah.
it's a 3D model, if I see a good turnaround of a 3D model, I can tell you somebody's really thinking. But if
Yeah.
I just see one image and it's like posed and it looks cool and whatever, like
It's
that,
more just
okay,
for
that's
show.
it's more just for show.
Yeah.
But anybody who's building things like toys or stuff in a game engine, you got to really know that there's so much more that goes into what a character that you see on screen
Yeah. So
than
just
just what's there.
to elaborate on that, like, so what makes a good design?
Ah,
It's a
let's
million
start with
dollar
what makes bad
question.
design. Let's talk about what makes bad design.
You're a
I would say let's
pessimist, I
like
see.
I like to say what's bad design. Give me an idea for bad design. What do you think is bad, Mo?
Well, bad design, I guess, is design that doesn't communicate the idea well. Like you were saying, kind of back at the beginning, it's called visual communication for a reason. That's kind of the I think the ultimate goal. So I think a bad design is anything that is doesn't give a clear understanding of whatever it is that you're trying, whatever the I don't know message, the story, the function, whatever it is that you're trying to tell with the design. If it doesn't communicate that well, I think that's for me would be the definition of a bad design.
Well, if you look at something like one of my favorite designer, Dieter Rams, his
Hmm.
designs don't look very cool, but they function. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like they
Hmm.
actually do the things that like you would see that and understand how to use it. He designed like a little hand radio for Sony.
Hmm.
And I mean, it just instantaneously communicates and connects. One of Johnny Ive, the former designer that worked at Apple, his job as a chief designer was designing indicators. Indicators are the one thing that if I look at something, I could figure it out in
Hmm.
seconds.
Yeah.
So, or he said, I want to invoke the feeling of, I want this phone to feel like air. I want this laptop to feel like air. So, how do I communicate that? Well, I use
Hmm.
lighter materials. I structurally change things up. I make it feel based on the way that it looks that you could just pick it up.
Hmm.
And I think that was, I've never seen a company like Apple create advertising against their own product. Like, I don't know, Mo, you know the MacBook Air, the design of it, like the footprint was so brilliant that years later, when they wanted to update us in 2016 and whatever, they
Hmm.
created their own 13-inch, which they said, look, it's just like it's lighter than the MacBook Air. It looks new, but it's and we want to move over these butterfly keys, right? And
Hmm.
so everyone's like, nope, we want that design back. And so like 3 or 4 years later, they bought it back. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
they realized that they couldn't shoot down what they'd created, and it was a beautiful piece of technology. Light fit in a little yellow manila envelope. I mean, I think
Hmm.
that's how it was revealed. Steve Jobs just pulled it out of yellow manila envelope, and people were like, "Whoa!" Same thing with the iPhone. Like when people saw the iPhone, they got it.
Yeah.
It's you use these digits, you touch the screen, and you use it as a piece of glass in your pocket. And I
Yeah.
think that really said something. Good design. We didn't say what bad design is. So I'll give you an example of bad design. Bad design is something like Microsoft's Nomad MP3 player. Did you ever see the Nomad?
I don't think so.
The Nomad, it was competing with the iPod. Uh, the it was this like thing that was very big and clunky, and I just people couldn't get it, but it had bigger capacities, and it was like, what is this thing? Or the Aztec car, the Aztec was this terrible car that was designed, and I found out later when I was at Art Center that it went back to the drawing board like halfway into production, which is something that's very rare. So I think bad design is something that you just can't connect with what it is or how it's used. But like good design, even by looking at it, you get a sense for what it does. And one of my favorite designs, um, I think that you probably maybe might not agree, but the original X-Wing.
Mm. Why is
It had
that?
that like because it goes flat and then it like opened up its wings
Yeah.
and instantaneously they go, okay, that means the guns are out, right? That means
Uh-huh.
that means it's ready to go. You
Yeah.
know, close its
Yeah.
wings, it means it needs to be flat and fast. I love that original X-wing design. I
Yeah.
also really liked the design of believe it or not, the I think I forget what they call it. The little who's that little character? The one the ball that sort of rolls around with the
BB-8?
dome. BB-8. Like that was incredible. Like when we saw it for the very first time, I go, let's just turn off mute the film for a second. That
Right.
looks cool. That
Right.
looks really
Right.
cool.
And also, it looks cute. Like it doesn't just look like a robot. Like it has that kind of cuteness factor, that personality that really reads really
I
nicely.
loved it. I loved it. I
Yeah.
also think that the child Grogu was really well designed by I think he's another Art Center alum,
Hmm.
Christian Elderman. Yeah, I met him in 2019 at Lightbox. He was awesome. I'm like, yeah, I also, he's like, yeah, I also grew up on Clone Wars. I'm like, see, I knew it. Yeah, I remember my brothers always telling me like those movies were terrible. You know, I'm
Yeah.
like, what are you talking about? I had all the toys, Staff and Battle Droid and everything. But I told him I thought his design of the baby was
Hmm.
really, really, really cute, and I thought that it was really communicative of how it worked, and you could definitely just it's the eyes, it's like
Mm. Yeah.
you definitely saw into it a bit more. Um, I also think that good design is something that everybody can sort of relate to on one level or another. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. One of the things that I think new people should know in the industry is that when I came back to Israel. That was like 2010, 2009, end of 2009. The you know the industry in America was going through some shifts. There was the Great Recession, and the market just tanked and crashed,
Yeah.
and there was not a lot of jobs back then. And yet the companies figured it out. People figured it out. Things came back. It took a few years, but things
Yeah.
came back. Things are cyclical. They go in
Yeah.
waves.
Yeah.
In the game industry goes down and fires a bunch of people and there's all these layoffs. It could uptick very fast, you
Right.
know?
Right. It's a
Um,
pendulum.
it's a pendulum that nobody
Yeah.
has a crystal ball to. But
Right.
I can tell you that I think that companies that are over investing in machine learning, um, I think that that's a big mistake.
Hmm.
I think that it's going to hamper because I used to think, well, that Disney films were made with magic. Don't. I mean, don't laugh.
With pixie dust.
Oh yeah, I used to think that like Disney movies are made with magic. I went to
Yeah.
Disneyland when I was a little boy, and I remember I just was like so captivated. I'm like, dude, this is awesome. And I
Yeah.
said, their movies must be made with magic. And then I met an animator named Joe Suggs, and he told me, nope, they're made by people like you and me.
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
would think.
Yeah.
So it's all that talent and all that creativity and all of those creative people that have really fueled that, it's us that made the movie,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
not them. They paid
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
But I also don't think that not having studio feedback is like if you let a director just go hog wild.
Right.
Um, yeah, did you ever see the a Valorian in in a Planet of a Thousand Cities?
No.
Exactly. So this guy Luc Besson, he directed The Fifth Element. So this film, I think, had a budget of $180 million. It went up against Spider-Man: Homecoming. It
I do remember. I do remember when it came out, but I never watched it.
came out in 2017.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It sounds familiar, actually.
and
I
I think
never
the
saw
reason is
it,
just because
but
Americans didn't really connect because they didn't really had like nobody cares who that comic
yeah.
book is.
Yeah.
Same thing when like certain pop stars from other
Right.
places come to
Right.
America and try to make a movie and like no one sees it. They're like,
Yeah. No
"What?
one knows who they are.
No one
Yeah.
knows who they are."
Yeah.
So for me, like you got a film like that, and there's some parts of it that look really cool and some interesting things, but
Yeah.
then it misses it. It misses it. It misses that point. It just doesn't connect.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason is twofold. It's what you can have a complex world in a very simple story, or a very simple story, um, or a very complex story in a simple world, or the opposite.
I really gotta actually head out. I got a
Okay,
heart out.
cool. We're good. We got a
Yeah.
hard out. That's great. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me, Mo.
Thank you so
And
much for coming on. Where can people find you? Can people find you? Are you're very
I'm a
elusive.
ghost. I'm a ghost, dude. I'm a ghost. I don't want to be found,
So
unless you,
if they need
you
to
know.
find you, they'll know how to.
I'd say this. I would say this. Like, if you guys want to go and go check out our website, pitchdevstudios.com. You can go check out our YouTube channel as well. You can go find us, our product Moon Control. You can find that on YouTube. And we'll be releasing a lot more content this year. So you
Awesome.
guys should be able to spot us. Thank you so much, Mo, for having
Yeah.
me.
All
All right, we'll be in
right, take
touch.
care.
All right. See you.